9 Wise Lessons I Wish I Had Learned Sooner. My name is Debra Ellison. I am 82 years old, and right now I am sitting on the porch of my little wooden home outside Boulder, Colorado. The sun is slowly disappearing behind the Rocky Mountains, and the evening air has that cool, familiar smell I have loved for years. Last month, I lost one of my closest friends. We had known each other for 50 years. She died in a hospital room without anyone beside her. It was not because her family did not care. They loved her, but life had scattered them in different directions. When I heard what had happened, something inside me changed. I began thinking about how many years I had spent trying to stay busy, please people, and surround myself with company. Deep down, I believed that if I remained useful and available, I would never feel lonely. But life eventually showed me that I was wrong. Whatever your age, I hope you will stay with me. I am not sharing this to frighten you. I want you to feel freer than I did. These are 9 lessons I wish someone had explained earlier. I did not discover them in a book. I learned them through disappointment, loss, broken promises, hospital rooms, and quiet nights when I had to be honest with myself. For 38 years, I owned a small bakery cafe called Morning Light. After my husband, Richard, died in 2014, I treated that cafe as if it were the heart keeping me alive. Every morning, I got up at 4:30, baked cinnamon rolls, poured coffee, and listened while customers told me about their problems. I always wanted to be dependable, a strong mother, a fun grandmother, and a friend who never said no. My daughter, Sarah, is 54 and works as an architect in Denver. She has always been ambitious, much like me, but her busy life created distance between us. When Sarah went through a divorce in 2018, I drove to Denver almost every weekend to care for my grandchildren, Emma and Lucas. I told myself I did it only because I loved them. But if I am honest, staying busy also helped me avoid sitting alone with my I was 76. Sarah was working on an important project, so the children stayed with me for 2 weeks. I cooked, cleaned, checked homework, and stayed awake worrying. One morning, I slipped on the wet kitchen floor and broke my hip. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. The physical pain was terrible, but the silence hurt even more. On some days, my telephone barely rang. Friends I had known for decades suddenly seemed too busy. Sarah visited whenever she could, but she had work, children, and a life of her own. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I finally faced a painful truth. I had connected my value to how much other people needed me. The moment I could no longer help everyone, I felt almost invisible. That realization became a turning point. I could have allowed myself to become bitter, but instead, I became curious. For the first time in years, I asked myself a different question: what do I need now? Not what does Sarah need, or what do my friends need, but what do I need? During the following 6 years, I slowly learned 9 truths that changed the way I live. They did not make me younger, but they gave me freedom. I want to share them while you still have time to use them. Lesson 1. I learned to feel comfortable by myself after my fall. I discovered how quickly relationships can disappear when you are no longer arranging every dinner or remembering every birthday. For years, I believed that having many friends proved that I was loved. I organized book clubs, hosted shared dinners, and kept my calendar full. Once I slowed down, many of those friendships quietly faded. Last year, on a rainy Tuesday, I sat on this same porch and realized that no one had visited me in 3 weeks. At first, the loneliness felt like a heavy stone pressing against my chest. I cried, and I allowed myself to admit that I was hurt. Then something began to shift. I started reading books I had bought years earlier. I planted tomatoes behind the house. I played my old jazz records and danced slowly across the kitchen without caring how I looked. I finally understood that I do not need a large group of friends. I need peaceful company, people who do not leave me emotionally exhausted. I now have 2 dear friends whom I see once a month, and that is enough. I released the others without anger. Living alone and feeling lonely are not the same. Once I learned to enjoy my own presence, loneliness lost much of its power. I stopped running after people who only liked the version of me that was always ready to help. If this scares you, begin with something small. Drink coffee by yourself. Sit outside for a few minutes without your phone. You may discover that a surprising amount of peace has been waiting for you in the quiet. I spent most of my adult life being careful with money. Every extra dollar from the cafe went into savings. I called that responsibility, but over time, responsibility turned into fear. Even 2 years after I sold Morning Light, I still had not taken a real vacation. I kept telling myself I would travel later, when everything felt safer. Then I turned 79 and realized that the later I had been waiting for was already here. So I did something that made me nervous. I booked a week alone in Sedona, Arizona. I stayed in a small adobe home and watched the morning sun light up the red rocks. One morning, I began crying, not from sadness, but from relief. I felt as though I had finally given myself permission to live. That trip taught me that money is not meant only to protect me from emergencies. Some of it should help me enjoy the life I still have. I still live simply, but I no longer refuse every small pleasure. I buy fresh flowers each week, enjoy good wine on Friday, and treat myself to a monthly massage. These are not foolish luxuries. They are gentle medicine for an aging spirit. I do not want to wait until my body can no longer travel or enjoy anything. My children do not need to inherit every dollar I earned. Perhaps seeing me live fully is a more valuable inheritance than money alone. Selling the cafe did not immediately teach me how to rest. I helped a friend in her bakery on weekends, volunteered at the local library, and agreed to nearly every request that came my way. Eventually, my body refused to cooperate. One morning, my hands were shaking so badly that I could not hold my coffee cup. My doctor told me that I was exhausted. There I was, 80 years old, still trying to prove that I was useful. That moment humbled me. My value had never depended on how much I could do for others. The world would continue if I rested, and my family would manage if I said no. These days, I begin my mornings slowly. I work in the garden while the sunlight is gentle. If I feel tired in the afternoon, I take a nap without apologizing. The less I force myself to accomplish, the calmer I become. Rest is not something I need to earn anymore. After a lifetime of work and responsibility, I am allowed to slow down. Lesson 4. I kept my home and protected my independence 3 years ago. I nearly sold this house. Sarah believed it would be easier if I moved closer to her in Denver. I knew she meant well, and for a short time, I seriously considered it. Then I imagined waking up in a home that was not mine, adjusting to another person's routine, and feeling as if I had to explain every choice. My chest tightened at the thought. In the end, I decided to stay, and I remain grateful for that decision. This house holds my memories, my habits, and my favorite chair. Even on a difficult day, I can prepare my tea exactly as I like it and sit quietly without explaining myself. Wanting my own space does not make me stubborn. For me, it is a form of self-respect. I intend to protect my independence for as long as my health safely allows it. Adult children may have good intentions, but they cannot always understand what independence means until they begin to lose some of their own. Breaking my hip forced me to hear what my body had been trying to tell me for years. It remembered every late night at the cafe, every long drive to Denver, every skipped meal, and every time I placed someone else's needs ahead of mine. During those 3 weeks in the hospital, I thought about all the warnings I had ignored, the constant tiredness I called normal, the back pain I dismissed, and the sleepless nights I spent worrying about my grandchildren's future. When I came home, I promised myself I would stop treating my body like a machine designed to run forever. Now I walk each morning on the path behind my house. I breathe the pine-scented air and feel thankful for every step I can take without pain. I eat proper meals with vegetables from my garden and enough protein. I no longer skip lunch to finish another task, and I usually go to bed before 10. I have learned that rest is not laziness. It shows respect for the body that has carried me through life. At 82, good health is not about trying to look young. It means having enough energy to read, embrace my grandchildren without pain, and enjoy an evening on the porch. My body is the only home I will occupy until my final day, so I now give it some of the care I once gave everyone else. Richard and I were married for 41 years. We loved one another deeply, but we wasted many evenings arguing about things that had no lasting importance. We fought over the open garage door, Christmas expenses, and how strict we should be with Sarah when she was a teenager. In 2009, we spent nearly 2 hours arguing over whether our new couch should be beige or gray. We went to bed angry, and I woke up the following morning feeling empty. After Richard died, would have given anything to have that evening back. I would not use it to win the argument. I would sit beside him, hold his hand, and enjoy the simple fact that he was still there. I now believe that being right is greatly overrated, especially in the later years of life. Peace matters more. Kindness matters more. If your partner is still with you, speak gently, touch with tenderness, and laugh whenever you can. The arguments that once seemed so serious may look foolish when you realize how limited your time together really is. This applies to every close relationship. I choose my battles carefully because calm, loving moments are what remain when the house becomes quiet. For a long time, I privately assumed that Sarah would manage everything when I became older. I imagined her arranging my medical visits, paying my bills, and taking care of my everyday needs. But Sarah has a career, a marriage, children, and worries of her own. When I placed all those unspoken expectations on her, tension grew between us. After my hip injury, I could see how hard she was trying and how much stress she carried. That was when I decided to remain as independent as I reasonably could. I became more comfortable with technology, arranged transportation to appointments, and kept control of my daily routine. Independence does not mean I never request help. It means I do not hand my whole life to someone else while I am still capable of making my own decisions. Being able to say, I can still take care of this, gives me dignity. It also protects my relationship with my daughter from resentment and pressure. I love Emma and Lucas more than I can express, but I eventually learned that love without limits can damage my health and disturb my peace. There was a time when I agreed to everything. I babysat for weeks, cooked large Sunday meals, and offered money whenever someone asked. I believed that this was what a good mother and grandmother was supposed to do. After caring for the children for 10 straight days, I sat on my couch and cried. I was not crying because I loved them any less. I cried because I had used every bit of energy I had and had nothing left for myself. That evening became my wake-up call. I began creating gentle but firm boundaries. I see my grandchildren when I have enough energy to enjoy our time. I help when I truly can, but I no longer agree to things simply because I feel guilty. To my surprise, our relationships became warmer. My family began respecting my time, and visits felt joyful instead of obligatory. Boundaries did not reduce my love. They made it healthier and easier to sustain. Protecting my energy allows me to be fully present when we are together. This was one of the hardest lessons for me to accept. I watched 3 close friends struggle during their later years. Once their adult children knew every detail about their savings, retirement accounts, and property, the family relationships began to change. Suggestions became expectations, and expectations sometimes became pressure. One friend admitted that she no longer felt in control of her own life. After seeing that, I made a different decision. I still help my family when I sincerely want to, but I keep part of my financial life private. This does not mean I distrust Sarah. It means I want to preserve my freedom and dignity for as long as I am able to make my own choices. That independence gives me peace. I can travel, buy something meaningful, or support a cause without permission. I can give from generosity rather than pressure. I worked hard for what I have. Protecting enough money for my own comfort, care, and security is not selfish. I believe it is wise. All 9 of these lessons lead me toward the same truth. The second half of life is not about holding everything more tightly. It is about learning what I can release with wisdom. I have released my need to be needed by everyone. I have let go of old expectations and much of my fear of being alone. Now I wake up gently. I care for my garden, read my books, and call Sarah because I want to hear her voice, not because guilt tells me I should. When Emma and Lucas visit, we laugh and enjoy one another. Then they return home, and I come back to my quiet house with a full heart and some energy still left for myself. At 82, I do not know how many more sunsets I will see behind these mountains. What I do know is that I no longer wait for anyone's permission to live peacefully. Maybe you are 55 and tired after years of constant work. Maybe you are 68 and feeling crushed by other people's expectations. Perhaps you are 75 and afraid you waited too long. You did not. You do not need to transform your entire life tomorrow. Begin with one small choice. Take a peaceful walk alone. Decline one responsibility you cannot carry. Make plans for the trip you have postponed. Small changes today can protect you from painful regrets later. You have spent many years caring for other people. Now you can offer yourself that same patience, attention, and love. You deserve peace. You deserve moments of joy. Most of all, you deserve to feel at home in your own life. I am Debra Ellison. I have made mistakes, cried in hospital rooms, and learned many of these truths the difficult way. But I am also proof that it is never too late to live with less pressure and more honesty. If my story touched something in you, share it with someone who may need these words. Please remember that the best part of your life is not necessarily behind you. What matters is how you choose to live the time that remains. Thank you for listening to an old woman who finally learned how freedom feels. Now give yourself permission to be free while the sun is still shining.